What's Hopkins really saying?
He doesn't like Bill OBrien, period. I mean, it's obvious. Bill O'Brien's not only the coach, he's the GM. What has he done to deserve that kind of power? I mean, they make the playoffs because they have a well, I don't know if he's transcendent, but I think he's great, Deshaun Watson. And whatever, you could listen to all kinds of rationalizations about why to make this move. Although David Johnson was considered to have, if not an immovable contract, not a good one. And certainly you'd have to normally accept something in return for taking Johnson's contract. In other words, you don't have to trade something to get David Johnson. If they want to unload that contract on you, they got to give you draft compensation or something like that. In addition, certainly they're not going to get one of the best receivers in the league with one of the greatest set of hands of all time in return. I mean, I know there's more draft compensation involved in all that stuff, and people therefore rationalize it and start talking about, well, look at the contract that Hopkins just got, and they'll be able to rebuild, or the Texans will make use of the resources. Let's cut through the clutter. Could you imagine in San Francisco back in the day, without consulting Joe Montana, they go up to Joe and they say, listen, I know you and Jerry Rice, you have a good thing going, but we traded Jerry Rice. We're going to have to pay him too much money. So we have other assets that we're going to build. What? The reason you pay a DeAndre Hopkins is he's worth it. And he got a contract that's not out of step with the market. He got something you would expect, more or less. And when do you pay a guy like that? Do you pay a guy like that if you're really rebuilding and you have no chance? No, you pay a guy like that when he's come up with your team, when you're ready to win, maybe make a Super Bowl push, when he is paired with a great young quarterback and they have chemistry. So DeAndre Hopkins is saying not only what we all know, it was a stupid trade, but I don't like that guy. He not only decides how to use the pieces he has, but he decides who he keeps and who he moves, and he decided to move off of me. I don't like him. I don't blame him.
Well, I don't blame him either, but I don't think that his comments were directed specifically at just Bill OBrien. I think it was directed at the Houston Texans organization, and I think that's apropos. Why do I say that, Max? Because of what we saw Deshaun Watson do the other day when he was guaranteed $111 million and signing his contract extension, and he broke down and was emotional. Why was he so emotional? He spoke to the level of trust and faith that the organization had in him. And he mentioned the owners. He mentioned the McNairs. And we can't ignore that. Obviously, they have significant say. And that money that was thrown in his direction, that would not have been the case if they didn't okay that. They have the power to overrule Bill OBrien. They have the power to sit up there and ask Bill OBrien, what the hell do you think you're doing? DeAndre Hopkins is an all-world receiver. First, there was rumors leaked that he wanted $18 to $20 million per year in an effort to make him look greedy, until we saw that Michael Thomas got that money, Julio Jones got that money, Amari Cooper ultimately got that money, and then all of a sudden it didn't seem out of pocket that DeAndre Hopkins wanted that. Yeah, he had 3 years left on his deal, but he had overachieved. And the bottom line is he wanted more security, and he deserved what he was in pursuit of. And they didn't speak up for him. They sided with Bill OBrien. Bill OBrien talked about loving DeAndre Hopkins or whatever, but we all know that their relationship was a bit abrasive, to say the least, at least according to numerous reports. So you have that going on. And then ultimately, where does the proof lie? The proof lies in the fact that Bill OBrien, this is not Bill Belichick here. This is not Robert Kraft necessarily disagreeing with Bill Belichick, but letting Bill Belichick do his thing. This is Bill OBrien, who's won nothing. I mean, in terms of really having postseason productivity. He hasn't done anything yet. He hasn't been to an AFC championship game, hasn't won a Super Bowl as a head coach. But this is the same Bill OBrien not only gets rid of one of the top 3 receivers in the world, top 3 or 4 receivers in the world, but he does so for a guy in David Johnson that really hasn't been productive since 2016 and has got a base salary of $10.2 million coming up this season. That's who you decided to do that, to trade DeAndre Hopkins for him and a second-round pick. And the organization did absolutely, positively nothing but side with you. So in that regard, if I'm DeAndre Hopkins, understanding the relationship that I have with Deshaun Watson, knowing that Deshaun Watson, my Clemson alum, did not want me me to leave, and I didn't want to leave him, and we loved one another, and we loved being in Houston with each other. And still, to allow Bill O'Brien to make those decisions based on those emotions, I don't think it was just about Bill O'Brien. I think it was about the McNairs. I think it was about ownership. I think it was about an organization that allowed Bill O'Brien to make these kind of decisions. I'm not saying it wasn't Bill O'Brien, of course, Max. I'm saying it doesn't stop there. I think DeAndre Hopkins was speaking about the organization as a whole. He wasn't isolating Bill O'Brien.
Look, you have a point that someone empowered Bill O'Brien. Nevertheless, he's the guy ultimately making that decision. I want this piece, I don't want that piece, et cetera. And now I'm also going to coach them a certain way. Usually that kind of power is reserved for coaches with better track records. You're right. And so maybe DeAndre Hopkins is implicating the entire organization. I think this is hard feelings for Bill O'Brien. And by the way, you know what Bill O'Brien could come out and say, which would make sense to me? If he said something like, look, this idea that you need a superstar receiver. In fact, I believe the only way to win is without a superstar receiver. Because if you look, it's not correlated with championships. Something like that would make more sense to me. Because unless he says something like that, if you hit on some of these draft picks, and let's say one of them turns out to be a superstar receiver, eventually those guys get paid. There's a reason they get paid. Like, you know, on the upper end of the scale, quarterbacks, of course, the highest, but also tackles and corners and receivers, because those are the most important pieces. So if you happen to hit on a guy who's as good as DeAndre Hopkins and those guys don't come along, like, you're unlikely to get that guy. Are you not going to pay him too? Do you just not believe in that? Bill O'Brien's been unclear about that. And I think that DeAndre Hopkins, for good reasons, thinks it was personal and holds hard feelings. And I'd feel the same way.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.